When the clergy abuse scandal erupted in early 2002, Eric MacLeish was one of the attorneys on the front lines and the headlines. But within 2 years, MacLeish was largely gone from public view, lost in a self-imposed exile to New Hampshire. Now MacLeish is speaking out about what happened. When the Boston Globe exposed the Catholic Church's systemic cover-up of abuse allegations, it was largely based on thousands of once secret files. Files that never would have seen the light of day if it weren't for a handful of attorneys like Eric MacLeish.
Mr. Ford isn't the only one who has posited that Father Shanley had something on the Archdiocese of Boston.
A tireless advocate for victims, MacLeish was the lead attorney in the mammoth lawsuit against the Boston Archdiocese, brought by over 500 abuse victims, leading to the resignation of Cardinal Bernard Law.
Mistakes were made.
But later, MacLeish privately revealed he too had been sexually abused as a young boy at the hands of a teacher at a boarding school in England. The resurfaced memories pushed MacLeish to the breaking point. As his personal life crumbled, he quietly took a teaching job at Plymouth State University in New Hampshire. Today, MacLeish is remarried. He and his spouse now run a mediation practice, and he says his days as a litigator are over. And Eric MacLeish is here. Eric, this is quite a story, really amazing.
Yes, it's interesting how people deal with trauma like sexual abuse, and I didn't deal with it with drugs and alcohol. I dealt with it by basically becoming a lawyer for people who've been victimized. As ironic as it sounds, as unbelievable as it sounds, I never connected those dots. And in my own case, I never did anything about confronting the people that had caused this, the person who had done it, and the people who had enabled him, until 2005, until after the cases were over.
But you had told a reporter, back when you were doing that James Porter thing, that you had had an incident at some kind of a summer camp. Did you not put that in the same category? It was some form of sexual abuse.
Yeah, I never forgot about this. I never particularly hid it. I didn't think of myself as a victim. I thought of myself as a...
In that case.
In that case. I thought of myself as I'm a tough lawyer.
Yeah.
Something happened to me. I never forgot what occurred in England. I never... that little boy that you saw, I remembered what happened to him. And actually in 2004, I discovered a letter from the wife of the headmaster that actually documented some of the abuse. So there were sort of trigger points along the way, but the larger point is that I was a pretty tough guy, but I was not ready to deal with this. And it really wasn't until I kind of came apart over it that I could.
Describe what happened to you. Can you remember?
I can. I was the only American in a boarding school in East Sussex, and there was a guy that you had to stay away from. And everybody knew about the guy. Back in England in those days, this was very common. I didn't stay away from the guy. I was a pretty lonely kid. I wasn't a tough kid. I didn't fight. I would be asked, really insisted that I come up for tutoring on Saturday nights in his study. I remember very clearly, never forgot what happens, what would happen. I would have we'd have a rug, sort of a blanket over us, and he would start, after sort of going through the pretense of tutoring, to move his hands under my pajamas. I never forgot about any of that. After a particular period of point, I can't remember what occurred, I can't remember how I got out of there. I do remember fighting on several occasions, but I didn't fight.
Okay.
You know?
So fast forward after, I mean, you were front and center, you were Mr. Media, you were everywhere, profiles in the Globe, on this show, you were everywhere, BZ Radio. And then suddenly you disappear. What happened in your head? What happened?
Well, what happened was that when the cases got all resolved, and we thought we were going to have to go to trial on the last one, the Ford case, but it got resolved. And it was almost like something in my brain said, okay, you really have to deal with this. This is something that you've never forgotten. It's always been there, but it's never been adequately processed. And I started to have flashbacks, and I had very vivid images, particularly of one client that I had represented who had been molested by a guy, now never went to jail, Father Lane. And had to bury his underwear in the woods. And for some reason, that story really resonated with me. I still can't remember burying my underwear in the woods when I was in boarding school, but I looked at my letters to my mother, and they were filled with requests for send me more underwear when I was in boarding school. So obviously, there was something there that just pushed this to the front. I couldn't escape it. I had to deal with it. And as in so many cases of victims of abuse, when they start to deal with it, they suffer real post-traumatic stress disorder, which is what happened to me.
And so you had a combination of things, a depression, and you became kind of dysfunctional. You had to get away from the law. And you had a thing about Boston, too.
I couldn't come back to Boston. It would trigger memories when I drove past St. Bernard's Church. Our home was very near the Chancery. It was almost impossible not to go by it. I really couldn't for a long period. Now I'm in Boston every day, but I couldn't come to Boston for a period of time. Seeing my children was hard for a while, but I did. But it was hard, and I went to Tibet and took my older daughter to the base camp of Mount Everest, and I took a motorcycle ride across. I did everything I could to try to avoid these flashbacks and memories, but by the fall of 2004, they were so overpowering that I just had to really just be by myself.
I mean, one thing led to another, though. I mean, your marriage fell apart.
Yes.
You practiced to some extent. I mean,
no, my firm was wonderful to me.
Yeah, Jeffrey Newman was
They
a great
gave me
guy.
unlimited leave. So my firm was absolutely, they understood. And I tried to come back, and I would go into the office, and they kept my nice corner office, and I would become ill and again start to have intense flashbacks about things that had happened there, clients that I'd met with, my own situation. And it was, until you've really gone through this, and I don't have it anymore, but until you've really gone through it, it's hard to understand how disabling this can be.
Were you on any kind of medications? And
Yes,
what got you through it?
You know what, interesting, the most effective thing, I think, and everybody's different, for me, going out and learning about stress management and meditation, and I went to school and I learned about it. I eventually taught it in New Hampshire to students and to law enforcement. I now teach it for lawyers sometimes. And learning about meditation and quieting my mind was, I think, as effective as any other medication or therapy that I received. And so that was a big thing for me, was being able to be quiet and learning how to quiet my mind. And gradually over time, the really intrusive interruptions into your brain, these very vivid memories, it died down.
You talk about how arduous and stressful and combative litigation was, which is part of the fun of it sometimes, I imagine. But you found it just so ugly, and so you're out of that. You're in a mediation.
Well, I am. I mean, it's not. I do legal work as well as mediation, but I love mediation. It's a much better process than litigation. Our court system is broken. The laws, particularly our antiquated laws on the statute of limitations for abuse and other violent crimes, are not well suited to the reality of what happens to victims of abuse. That's why there's legislation that I'm trying to get assist others getting passed.
Oh yeah, let's talk about that. You want to raise the civil complaint law from you can't wait. Right now it's 21 years of age. You want to raise it to 55. So it goes away after age of 21, these civil complaints, but you want to say no.
Well, right now the law is that you have 3 years from the date that you make a connection in your own mind with the abuse and your psychological injuries to file a lawsuit. That doesn't mirror the reality. I was a tough guy. I couldn't deal with this until I was in my mid-50s. So the existing law is not adequate. The various bills, but basically one would extend the age up to 55, and that would be retroactive. And when you think about the good that civil justice has accomplished, not just the criminal cases, but civil justice in terms of exposing institutions and changing them, this is not just a trial lawyer's, get-rich-quick bill. This is something that's based in sound public policy, which is why it passed the House 2 years ago, and I think this session we're going to get it through. It's been done also in 5 other states, too. And so this is a very valuable thing. And on the criminal side, we had major reforms of statute of limitations for victims of sexual assault children in 2006. That's now up to age 43. But we can even do more on the civil side. This isn't the panacea. This isn't the answer to solving sexual abuse. Sexual abuse still is out there, but this is one tool that could be helpful.
I'm curious if any of the victims that you helped so much, Rodney Ford, some of the people that became so if you're in touch with them, do you know how he's doing?
Yeah, I am in touch with the Fords. And they're doing well. And, again, it's not like bringing a lawsuit is the sole answer, either in terms of, restoring people's health. It's not always. Sometimes it actually can be counterproductive. But it's one tool that, in the case of the Fords, was really meaningful. It was meaningful for Rodney Ford and Greg Ford, people that we all saw a lot of 10 years ago, to be doing what they were doing. And I think they're glad they did it.
So, well, as I say, quite a story.
Thank you, Emily.
Eric MacLeish, pleasure to have you here.
Nice to be here.
Thanks for coming. All right, and that is it for Greater Boston. Tomorrow, Wampanoag Chief Cedric Cromwell is here to talk about how his tribe is still pushing for the lone casino license in southeastern Massachusetts. And Jared Bowen talks with actor Dennis Quaid about his new movie about a father struggling to keep the family farm and a son who would rather race cars.
When they hand out that big check in the winner's circle, guess whose name's going to be on it? Mine. You're not going to make it in the big leagues. Just take the land. It's in your blood. The sooner you understand that, the better. Dad, I can't even hear you, okay? I got to get the screen to the elevator before they close.
Dennis Quaid tomorrow on Greater Boston. I'm Emily Rooney. Thanks for watching.